Excellent. She'll find a use for this around the house. My son-in-law spoke these words while holding up a maid's apron and a matching cap. Pristine white, expensive linen, embroidered with my daughter's name and the Chesterton family crest. It was a gift from his mother, Genevieve, to Zinnia on her own wedding day. I saw my baby girl's eyes fill with tears. I saw her knuckles turn white as she clutched that cursed fabric. And in that moment, something that had been dormant inside me for 6 decades woke up. It was the ancient primal rage of a mother protecting her child. Before we dive deep into this fascinating story, please drop a comment and let me know which state or country you're tuning in from. It is an honor to know who is sharing the airwaves with me right now. Happy listening. 6 months before this incident, I visited my older sister, Etta, in our parents' old apartment in West End. She was fussing with the kettle in the kitchen, brewing chamomile tea, and her rough hands with their broken nails were trembling from exhaustion. The apartment where we grew up now felt foreign and cold after Mama passed away 2 years ago, taking the last bit of warmth from those walls with her. I had always been the star of the family, a statuesque beauty with a sculpted profile and regal posture. At 22, I rushed into marriage with Reginald Vance, a successful contractor with a booming construction business. For 20 years, I lived like a baroness in a mansion in Buckhead, where a private driver took me to boutiques, a housekeeper cleaned up after me, and a gardener tended to the azaleas. I had everything a woman could dream of, except the most important thing: respect. You know, Vandra, what the scariest part is? Etta said, staring into her cup. It wasn't even that he had women on the side. It was the realization that for 20 years, I lived in a stranger's house, walking on eggshells, everything around me existing only by his mercy. And when that mercy ran out, he kicked me out like a stray cat he was tired of feeding. After my own divorce, it turned out the house was in my father-in-law's name. The cars were leased through Reginald's company, and the bank accounts were his alone. 20 years of marriage, 3 children raised, hundreds of business dinners hosted for his partners, and in the end, I walked away with empty hands. At 42, I had to move back into our parents' 2-bedroom place with 3 teenagers and an empty wallet. When I mentioned that Zinnia was getting married, Etta's face twisted in horror. She grabbed my hand tight. "Vandra, honey, don't let her repeat my fate. Do something, I beg you." That night, I tossed and turned, running numbers and scenarios through my head. The image of my sister, hunched over a cup of cold tea, haunted me like a ghost. Zinnia had met Sterling Chesterton 3 years ago at a corporate mixer. She came home floating on air, eyes shining. "Mama, I met someone incredible." The Chestertons were an old Atlanta family, the kind of black folks who had been wealthy since before the civil rights movement, the kind who looked down on anyone who hadn't summered in Sag Harbor or Martha's Vineyard. His mother, Genevieve Chesterton, a widow, had turned her late husband's inheritance into a chain of elite beauty salons. She was the type of woman who measured people by their zip codes and the price tags on their handbags. Our first meeting took place at a trendy bistro in Midtown. Genevieve arrived 30 minutes late and didn't even look me in the eye, mumbling a careless excuse about traffic on Peachtree Street. From that day on, I ceased to be Vandra Vance. I was just Zinnia's mother, a faceless appendage to her son's bride. Watching her with Sterling, I noticed one detail. Whenever his mother spoke, the son would smirk, a specific, conspiratorial, knowing smirk. They exchanged glances over our heads, sharing some secret joke about us, the common folk. 6 months before the wedding, Zinnia came home quiet and slumped down at our kitchen table. This was the table where we always dissected our joys and troubles. Picking at the tablecloth with her fingernail, she mumbled indistinctly. His mother said, "She really ought to learn how to cook up to our family's standards. She said they have their own way of doing things." "And what did Sterling say?" I asked, my guard going up. He said, "Mama's right. You need to try harder." I lay awake all night, staring at a crack in the ceiling. By morning, I had made a vow. My daughter would not repeat the fate of my sister, a woman forever silent, forever enduring. Through an acquaintance, I found a lawyer named Thaddeus Marshall, an old legal shark from downtown who knew where all the bodies were buried. I laid out my plan, to buy a house exclusively in my daughter's name. He adjusted his glasses and peered at me over the rims. "Ms. Vance, do you understand the consequences? This could complicate their marital life." "I understand," I cut him off, "because I have never been more sure of anything in my life. I didn't have big money. For 15 years, I had been hustling with homemade baked goods, custom cakes, sweet potato pies for local cafes. Every dime passed through my tired hands, earned through sleepless nights by the oven. But there are things money can't measure. Peace of mind for your child. The certainty that she won't be on the street because of someone's whim. First, I went into Mama's jewelry box and took out everything that was left of my parents. A heavy gold chain, Grandma's antique garnet earrings, and Daddy's wedding band with the sapphire, the one he gave Mama for their silver anniversary. I visited 3 pawn shops before settling on the 4th. At least there, they looked me in the eye like a human being. The appraiser sighed. "You sure about this? These have memories attached." I nodded and walked out with $8,000 in cash. That night, putting the empty box away, I whispered into the dark, "Forgive me, Mama and Daddy, but this is for Zinnia, you understand." Next went my car, a reliable 2015 Toyota Camry that had served me faithfully for 7 years. A young couple from Marietta inspected it critically, but handed over $9,000, better than nothing. I switched to taking MARTA buses and overcrowded trains. I loaded myself down with orders until my back ached. To my usual cakes, I added a morning pastry run for a coffee shop in Buckhead. I was up at 4 in the morning. By 5, the first batch of eclairs was already browning in the oven. They paid pennies, an extra $500 a week, but every penny counts. Zinnia started to notice. "Mama, you look pale. Have you lost weight?" "Oh, it's nothing, baby, just lots of orders. Holiday season is coming up." I waved it off. It was too early for her to know the truth. Everything in its own time. With a realtor named Mrs. Higgins, God bless that woman, a client recommended her, we scoured the suburbs. We looked at houses in Stone Mountain, Smyrna, townhouses in Vinings. The 7th house we saw felt like home at first sight. It was in Decatur, a sturdy craftsman bungalow about 10 minutes from the square. Yellow siding, a typical southern porch. In the yard stood an old, spreading oak tree, and hydrangea bushes lined the fence. The gate with its wrought iron curls creaked welcomingly. "The owners moved to D.C. They're selling fast," Mrs. Higgins chirped. "Fresh renovations. Move-in ready." Inside, it smelled of pine floors and fresh paint, a living room with a bay window taking up the whole wall, a spacious kitchen, not like my little closet. Upstairs, 2 bedrooms. The big window looked right out onto that oak tree. I closed my eyes and saw Zinnia with a cup of morning coffee by that window, calm and safe. "I'll take it," I said, not bargaining. $350,000. The sum was astronomical for me. I paid the down payment in cash and took out a mortgage for the rest. $2,700 a month for 15 years, more than half my usual income. But I would manage. I had to manage. The wedding was roaring at a country club in Alpharetta. The Chestertons paid for everything, from the first glass of champagne to the last rose in the bouquets. Genevieve fluttered between tables, loudly broadcasting to anyone who would listen exactly how much money they had poured into this celebration. 120 guests. I hadn't seen half of them in my life. After the ceremony, the banquet hall was drowning in white roses mixed with blue hydrangeas. Zinnia shone in a lace dress, looking weightless, fragile, and happy. I wiped away tears secretly. A mother's heart is always torn between joy and anxiety for her child's future. After the third toast, the dancing began, followed by fake compliments and side-eye glances from Genevieve's friends, businesswomen just like her in designer gowns. I sat on the edge, watching, waiting. And then it was time for the gifts. Genevieve stood up first, lifting a gilded box the size of a suitcase. Her procession to the newlyweds was theatrical. The smile on my mother-in-law's face didn't reach her eyes. In them swam a cold triumph. She announced to the entire hall that she had prepared something special, practical, and useful for the household. She untied the ribbons deliberately slowly. She lifted the lid with a pause for effect. She pulled from the rustling tissue paper a snowy white apron and a maid's cap, linen, clearly expensive, with gold stitching. Zinnia was embroidered in script on the chest, and below it the stylized Chesterton crest. The hall went so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Given our history in this country, the imagery was unmistakable. It wasn't just a gift. It was a statement of place. "So that our little bride looks dignified even in her domestic chores," Genevieve sang out. "In our family, even the help dresses impeccably." Her girlfriends giggled into their fists, covering their mouths with manicured fingers. And then happened the thing that made my insides turn to ice. Sterling walked up to his mother, took the apron, turned it over in his hands, and broke into a grin. "Excellent, Mom. She'll find a use for this around the house." Tears rolled down Zinnia's cheeks. She tried to smile, but her lips trembled, and her hands, clutching the fabric, turned white. And that's when something snapped in me. I stood up slowly, pushing back my chair. My legs felt like cotton. My hands were shaking, but my voice, thank God, didn't waver. "What an original gift, Genevieve! Well, allow me to present my gift now." I pulled a velvet envelope from my purse and handed it to Zinnia. "Open it, baby girl." Zinnia took the envelope with clumsy fingers, pulled out the documents, unfolded the top sheet, and began to read in a breaking voice. Deed of trust. Property type, residential. Address, Decatur, Georgia, Oakview Lane, number 15. Owner, Zinnia Vance. The silence was so thick that the sound of a fork hitting a plate sounded like a gunshot. Genevieve went from white to crimson. Her expensive foundation couldn't save her. Sterling froze with his mouth slightly open, the smile sliding off his face. "This means," I continued, looking my son-in-law right in the eye, "that my daughter has her own house, her house, registered in her name, only in her name." I don't understand," Zinnia stammered. "Read the next page," I said gently. Zinnia unfolded the second document and read, her voice steadier now. "Title transfer registered prior to marriage. The property is classified as separate property of the owner." Someone among the guests let out a low whistle. An elderly aunt of Sterling's from Chicago announced loudly to her neighbor, "Well, I'll be damned. Good job, Mama. That's the right move. I tell my own kids, keep your assets in your own name so you don't cry later." Genevieve shot a withering look at her relative. A wave of applause rolled through the hall, sparse at first, then louder. Someone shouted, "Bravo! Now that's a mother!" Genevieve stood in the middle of the hall with the maid's apron in her hands, looking ridiculous and lost. The white linen with gold embroidery no longer looked like a gift. It looked like evidence. Before they left for their honeymoon, she rolled up to us, hissing through her teeth. "I hope the newlyweds enjoy Turkey, or wherever, but when they return, we will discuss the housing question. They aren't going to rot in some shack in Decatur." Zinnia straightened her back, and for the first time, I saw steel in her. "We have a place to live, Genevieve. In my house, and it is not a shack." Her mother-in-law pursued her lips until they disappeared. "We shall see, darling, we shall see." The black BMW with the newlyweds drove off toward the airport. I stood at the entrance, watching the red taillights until they dissolved into the humid Georgia night. At 2 a.m, I got a call from Jamaica. Zinnia spoke in a strangled voice. "We made it and checked in." Pause. "Mama?" "Sterling hasn't spoken to me at all since the airport." My heart dropped. I chose my words carefully. "Zinnia, listen to me. A man who punishes a woman with silence because she has protection, that is not love. That is a desire to control. Do you feel the difference?" "Mama, but he's upset. His mother—" "His mother humiliated you in front of everyone, baby, and he approved of it. Now he's pouting because you have a roof of your own. Think hard about that." The following days dragged on agonizingly. Zinnia called and spoke in snippets, almost whispering, afraid her husband would hear. On the 5th day, she broke down crying into the phone. "We had a terrible fight. Sterling accused me of being ungrateful and you of being manipulative. He demanded I sell the house and put the money into a joint account. He said if I don't trust my husband, I shouldn't have married him." "What he is doing," I spoke slowly so my daughter would remember every word, "is called emotional blackmail. Trust, honey, isn't handing over everything you have to leave yourself bare. Trust is when they respect you with what is yours." At the airport, both mothers were waiting, me and Genevieve, on opposite sides of the barrier. The newlyweds came out separately. He pushed the luggage cart ahead. She trailed behind with a backpack. 2 strangers on the same flight. Genevieve started chirping about a dinner reservation at a high-end steakhouse. "We need to discuss domestic arrangements." Sterling nodded mechanically. "I'm tired," Zinnia cut in. "I want to go home." "To that hovel your mother bought to manipulate you?" Genevieve snapped. And then Zinnia did something I didn't expect. She squared her shoulders, lifted her chin, and enunciated clearly, looking her mother-in-law in the eye. "To my house, Genevieve, the one in my name, where my husband and I will live. And if Sterling doesn't like it, then we have problems much more serious than choosing a restaurant." My son-in-law drove the car in silence, his jaw clenched. I followed in a taxi. When we pulled up to the house, the evening sun was turning the facade gold. The hydrangeas were in bloom, and the oak tree stood in full glory. "It's beautiful," Zinnia exhaled, pausing at the gate. Sterling walked through the rooms with a sour face, hands in his pockets. "It's too small. Ceilings are low. Commute to Midtown is 40 minutes with traffic." "Just right for a young family," I parried. "This isn't my house," he stated flatly. "It is your wife's house," I said. "You really outdid yourself, Ms. Vance." "I certainly did." 3 weeks later, I dropped by without calling. I missed her, and I was anxious. Zinnia opened the door, disheveled, wearing a wrinkled t-shirt, her eyes red. The house had been furnished quickly, cheap minimalism without soul. Gray sofa, glass table, white walls, no photos, no flowers, no warmth. "Zinnia, where are your books, your knitted throws, your favorite plants?" "Sterling says all that is clutter. We're doing minimalism now." I hugged her, pressed her to me. "Baby, this is your house." "Is it?" "Furnish it how your soul wants." "Mama, but we live together." Together doesn't mean only by his rules. Together means your opinion counts too. Zinnia stopped being invited to Genevieve's events. Her mother-in-law declared that until her daughter-in-law came out of her cave, she had no place in decent society. Sterling went to his mother's every Sunday alone and returned after midnight. 3 months later, the changes were frightening. Zinnia abandoned her bright dresses. Now it was only black, gray, beige. "Sterling says at my age, I need to dress more respectfully." "At your age? You're 26. What age, Lord?" her friends complained. Zinnia had disappeared, wouldn't answer calls, wouldn't come out. Her best friend from Spelman, a girl named Keisha, called me almost crying. "Miss Vondra, what's wrong with her? She says Sterling doesn't want her hanging out with single women, says we're a bad influence." One Thursday in November, I drove over spontaneously. I'd bought groceries and decided to surprise her. I rang the bell. Silence. Then I took my spare key, opened the door, and walked in. The house was like a morgue. Curtains drawn, semi-darkness, stale air. I called out. Silence. I went upstairs. Zinnia was sitting on the floor by the window in the bedroom, hugging her knees, rocking back and forth, staring through the curtain at nothing. I sat down next to her on the cold floor. Outside the window was gray November, the bare oak tree, and a flock of crows. "Baby girl, what happened?" And then she said 2 words that changed everything. "I'm pregnant." 2 months along, Sterling knows, and his verdict? Now definitely no working. You stay home, raise the child, and sell the house. There's no point rotting out here in the boonies. We need a condo in the city, closer to my mother. We'll use the money from the sale plus my savings to buy a 3-bedroom in Buckhead. We'll put it in both our names. We're a real family now." "That's what he told you?" "Yes." The next day, I drove my daughter to Thaddeus Marshall. Urgent appointment. Zinnia admitted she had already signed some papers. Sterling told her it was just preliminary stuff for the realtor. Thaddeus studied the documents and grunted. "Preliminary agreement. No legal force without the notarized closing of the main deal. You can back out without problems. But the main thing," he continued, "is that the house is deeded exclusively to you, Zinnia. To sell it, your personal presence is required at the closing attorney's office, and your voluntary consent. The attorney is obligated, do you hear me? Obligated, to ensure you are acting voluntarily, without coercion. Your husband has no rights to this house. None." "He'll say I don't trust him," Zinnia whispered. The lawyer took off his glasses and looked straight at her. "Young lady, you are afraid of your own husband's reaction. Does it not seem to you that this is already a diagnosis?" He handed her a business card. "Marina Davis, a very good family law attorney. If it comes to divorce, call her." I stayed to help around the house while Zinnia was at work. At noon, the door almost flew off its hinges. Sterling barreled in, wearing the same clothes as yesterday, smelling of liquor and tobacco. "Where is Zinnia?" "At work, like all normal people." "You," my son-in-law pointed a finger at me. "This is all because of you, because of your damn house. You turned my wife against me." "I didn't turn her against anyone. I protected her, and you treat her like an object." He jumped up close to me, breathing in my face. "Zinnia is my wife. The house will be sold. We will move where I say. It's not for you to decide. The house is in Zinnia's name. She already signed. That paper is garbage. Ask a lawyer. Or ask ours. We consulted yesterday," I said. His face twisted. It filled with purple blood and his eyes bulged. Sterling punched the wall. Plaster cracked. "My pregnant wife is running around to lawyers? Behind my back? Not behind your back. For protection. Because a loving husband doesn't intimidate, doesn't isolate, doesn't turn his wife into a slave. You're just a bitter old hag. You want your daughter to end up a worthless failure just like you?" "My late husband," I said slowly, "never once in all the years we were together raised his voice at me. Never once made me doubt myself. That, young man, is called love. What you have is a desire to possess property. Get out of my house. I repeat for the slow-witted, this is not your house." I picked up my purse. On the threshold, I turned back. "And remember, Sterling, if you touch my daughter with even one finger, I will personally bury you. And that is not a threat. That is a mother's promise." From the train, I called Zinnia to warn her. She listened in silence, then said, "Enough, Mama. I'm tired of hiding in my own house. I'll go and talk to my husband like a human being." I begged her not to go alone. Useless, stubborn, just like her father. At midnight, the phone rang. Zinnia was sobbing, gasping for air. "Mama, come get me, please." I grabbed my coat, threw it right over my housecoat, and called an Uber. The 40-minute ride through the night city felt like an eternity. Roadwork on I-20. The front door was wide open. Zinnia was sitting on the stairs, shaking all over. "Shh, shh, I'm here." I pressed her to me. "It's not over, Mama. It's just beginning," she whispered. We talked in the kitchen until sunrise. Sterling didn't come back. His phone was off. Zinnia laid it all out. How he goes through her phone at night, reads her texts. He demanded passwords for everything. Email, social media. He goes into a rage if she doesn't reply to a text within 10 minutes. Criticizes her body. Says she's getting fat from the pregnancy, even though she's barely showing. Genevieve shows up without warning to inspect. Leaves snide notes where she finds a speck of dust, and issued the ultimatum. "Quit your job. Sit home." "This is domestic violence," I said plainly. "Psychological for now. But these things only escalate." The next evening I left. but I told my daughter to call every 2 hours. At 11 p.m., she called. Panic was in her voice. "Mama, he locked me in the bedroom. We fought. He yanked the key out, locked it from the outside. He said, 'Sit there, cool off, think about your behavior,' and he left." Uber again. My hands shook as I typed the address into the app. The house was dark and silent. I used my key to open the front door and went up. Bedroom locked. Key sticking out of the lock on the outside. I turned the key. Zinnia was on the floor by the bed, arms wrapped around her stomach, face wet. "Call the police?" No, Mama, just take me away from here, right now." We packed a bag in a hurry. Clothes, documents, the essentials. I found the folder with the house papers. Thank God everything was there. We walked out at 1 in the morning. Zinnia looked back at the porch. "I dreamed so much of being happy here." "You will be, baby. Just not with him." The next 3 days were a living hell. Sterling called from a dozen numbers, sent texts, sometimes begging, promising to change, other times threatening to take the child, to destroy her, to sue. "He can't take the baby," I insisted. "You did nothing wrong. He locked you up. That's false imprisonment, by the way. A crime. I'm a witness. We have his texts with threats. The law is on your side." On the 4th day, Genevieve arrived at my sister's apartment. She stood on the threshold in a mink coat and dark glasses, even though it was a cloudy November. "I need Zinnia." "Zinnia does not wish to speak with you." "I am her mother-in-law, the grandmother of the future child." "You were a mother-in-law. You have no rights now." She reached into her purse and fished out an envelope. "Here. If she returns to Sterling, we will gift her a 2-bedroom condo in Midtown, in her name, 1,200 square feet, luxury finishes." "Are you out of your mind? You think you can buy my daughter?" "It's not a purchase. It's care for my grandson. Your little shack is not fit for a Chesterton child. You could offer a palace and Zinnia still wouldn't go back to a man who locked her in a room." She pursed her lips. "You're being stubborn for no reason. A single mother? Oh, that's a hard road. Don't expect any help from us." I slammed the door and turned around. Zinnia was standing in the hallway. She had heard everything. "Mama, I'm not for sale." That evening, we sat in the office of Marina Davis, a sharp woman in her 40s, clearly competent. She listened to us from A to Z, taking notes. "Classic abuse, coercive control with elements of physical restraint, grounds for a restraining order, absolutely. Divorce, child support, it's all doable. Given the circumstances, the court will be on your side." "Restraining order? Like in the movies?" Zinnia asked, surprised. "Exactly. So he can't come within 500 feet of you. Given the threats and the locking incident, a judge will sign off on it." That night, Zinnia tossed and turned. Toward morning, she came into the kitchen. I was just kneading dough for a morning order. "I'm filing for divorce," she said, voice trembling but eyes steady. I hugged her, getting flour all over her shoulder. "I'm proud of you, baby girl." "I'm scared, Mama. Pregnant and alone, court battles ahead." "You are not alone. Never alone. Do you hear me?" Sterling got served the papers and the circus began. New numbers, fake social media accounts, stalking outside the windows. I saw his BMW across the street. He'd sit there, staring at our windows. One day, he managed to get through on the phone. Zinnia picked up. I motioned for her to hang up, but she decided to speak. "I'm not coming back, Sterling. You hurt me. I need to protect myself and my baby." "Protect from me? I'm your husband. I love you." "People who love you don't lock you up. They don't control every breath you take, and they don't humiliate you. Your mother was right from the start. Your mother ruined everything. Without her, we would be happy." "We weren't happy, Sterling. I was miserable from day one. I was just too afraid to admit it to myself." She hung up and blocked the number. I looked at my daughter, and for the first time in months, saw peace in her eyes. Not joy yet. Too early for joy, but peace. The silence after a hurricane. And that was enough for now. 6 months later, little Keziah was born. The birth was easy at Northside Hospital. I paced the hallway for 8 hours. Finally, they let me in. Zinnia, with her daughter in her arms, tired but smiling. Keziah Vance. Zinnia insisted on her own name, tiny, wrinkled, beautiful. "I will always protect you, little one," Zinnia whispered. "I promise." Sterling saw his daughter at a visitation center under supervision, once a week, as ordered. At first, he tried hard, brought rattles, took photos for Instagram. Then he started coming less often, once every 2 weeks, then once a month. He found a new victim pretty quickly, a 22-year-old fitness trainer with long legs who didn't have a place of her own, or a meddlesome mother. The divorce was finalized when Keziah turned 9 months old. Sterling signed everything without a fight. He had a different life now. He waived custody, keeping only the right to periodic visits. He told the lawyer, "I have other priorities right now." The court ordered $1,200 a month in child support. He paid every other time, with delays. Transfer pending, paycheck late. We had to garnish his wages twice. But Zinnia's life blossomed. She went back to work when Keziah was 8 months old. Negotiated a remote position. Her boss appreciated her grit. A year later, she was promoted to art director. She made friends with other moms at the park in Decatur. They started a group chat, helping each other out. For the first time in a long time, Zinnia became herself. 2 years later, we heard news. Sterling and the fitness trainer split up. She ran away from him back to her parents in Memphis. The reason was the same. Control, checking phones, forbidding friends. Genevieve defended her son. Girls these days are so ungrateful. They don't appreciate a good man. 3 years later, she had a stroke. She survived, but was partially paralyzed. Sterling hired a nurse. He couldn't be bothered. She died a year later in a hospital room. At Genevieve's funeral, attendance was sparse. Zinnia heard about it from a former colleague of Sterling's. She didn't go to the funeral, didn't see the point. That evening, she sat by the window for a long time, looking at the oak tree, thinking about the woman who raised a monster and never understood what she did wrong. Sterling now lives alone in his mother's apartment and works at some IT firm. He rarely appears on social media. In photos, he looks older than his 35 years. Keziah sometimes asks about her daddy. Zinnia doesn't lie. Daddy lives separately, sunshine. He doesn't really know how to be a daddy. But that is not your fault. Remember that. Life put everyone in their places. Sterling wanted to own everyone and ended up with no one. Zinnia chose freedom and gained everything. Today, Keziah turned 7. A feisty girl with braids and curious eyes, just like her mother. Once she asked me at breakfast, "Grandma, why doesn't Daddy come see me?" Zinnia answered honestly, "Daddy is lost, Keziah. Adults sometimes lose their way to the most important things. Maybe he'll find it someday, maybe not. But you know what? You are loved by Mama, Grandma, Auntie Etta. That is more than enough." The house in Decatur became a real nest. The oak tree grew even bigger. In the spring, the dogwoods bloom white across the neighborhood. The hydrangeas by the fence are like purple clouds in May. Zinnia furnished it her way. Books everywhere, knitted blankets, plants on every windowsill, walls covered in photos. Keziah in first grade, Keziah at the beach in Tybee Island. The 3 of us at the botanical garden. On summer evenings, we sit under the oak tree, drinking iced tea. Zinnia met a man. Langston, a history teacher at Keziah's school, divorced. He has a daughter, Maya, same age as our Keziah. They aren't rushing. They've only been dating 6 months, but I see the difference. He listens when Zinnia speaks. He asks for her opinion before making a decision. He doesn't try to remake her to fit himself. With Sterling, I was always shrinking, Zinnia admitted over tea, so he would feel big. But with Langston, I can be exactly who I am, fully. That's what love is, Mama, when you don't have to shrink. I sit under the oak tree, watching Keziah and Maya chase the neighbor's cat. I remember that cursed evening at the country club, the apron with the gold embroidery, Sterling's smirk. all those women in unhappy marriages who endure and stay silent because they have nowhere to go. It wasn't the house that saved Zinnia. It was the knowledge. The knowledge that there is an exit, there is a choice, and there is a mother who won't let you fall. Zinnia comes out with a pitcher of lemonade. Keziah runs to her, hugging her legs. Langston waves from the porch. He brought pizza. Good man. I look at the oak tree, at the house, at my girls. True love doesn't keep you in a cage. True love gives you wings. And sometimes wings look like a folder of documents, like a house in your own name, like the right to walk away when it becomes unbearable. And thank God I managed to understand that before it was too late. Did you like the story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.